Welcome to Have More Babies. Today we're looking closely at a specific source. It's a blog post from Omega Pediatrics called "What is All the Fuss About Vaccines and Immunizations?"
hmm
Now, there's so much noise, around childhood vaccines. This article, coming from a pediatric clinic, gives a pretty direct perspective. So
Yeah,
our aim here is to really unpack what this specific article says, understand its main arguments, the information it puts forward, and hopefully cut through some confusion by focusing just on this source. Okay, let's get into it.
absolutely. And it really does lay out a strong case, from the viewpoint of pediatricians.
Yeah.
The goal seems to be clarifying things for parents who are, well, caught between all the conflicting info out there. The source even calls some of it anti-vaccination propaganda. It definitely highlights the pediatrician's role.
Right off the bat, the source says, your child's pediatrician is on your side. It emphasizes that immunization is crucial and regardless of what the media says.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how it acknowledges the impact of, well, what it calls anti-vaccine propaganda.
Mhm.
It says it's made it hard to get good info to parents, it's undermined confidence, and listen to this, it says it's even made parents feel guilty about vaccinating.
Guilty. Wow.
Yeah, they mentioned there's research showing this confusion and, well, this guilt.
So that's a key thing the source puts out there first. It sees this challenge parents face with all these mixed messages. And it says, look, your pediatrician is your ally here, trying to counter that confusion.
Exactly. It's recognizing the situation parents are in today.
Okay, so from there, where does the article go?
Well, pivots to the basic question. Why vaccinate at all? It says pretty clearly, the parents need to understand the real threat, the potential danger of communicable diseases. And it states that immunization through vaccines has been very successful in health promotion and illness prevention. Just fundamentally successful.
Okay, and then it gets into something that's, well, talked about a lot. The source directly takes on the idea that vaccines cause autism. It points to the Institute of Medicine, saying they've put out at least 8 different reviews. 8. And they all show no relationship between vaccination and autism.
8 reviews. That's quite a body of evidence they're referencing.
It really is.
So that brings up the question, right? If all these reviews say no link, why does the idea, hang around so much?
Yeah, what does the source say about that?
The article suggests it's often about coincidence, about the timing. Early developmental delays or an autism diagnosis, they often become noticeable around the same age the kids get their primary immunizations.
Ah, I see. The timing lines up.
Exactly. And the source argues that some anti-vaccine literature just connects those dots, uses that correlation to suggest one caused the other.
Right.
Even though, according to the evidence they cite, there's no causal link. Just two things happening around the same time.
Got it. Like seeing storm clouds and the power going out and assuming the clouds directly caused the outage when maybe it was a fallen tree miles away.
Precisely.
Right.
A correlation, not necessarily causation. And then the source really seems to want to drive home why prevention matters. It gets into the specifics of what vaccines protect against. It uses this image, of a baby leaving the safe, sterile womb and entering a world that's, well, full of potential dangers. Prevention is easier than cure, basically.
Yeah, and the descriptions it uses for the diseases themselves, they're quite vivid. Let's maybe walk through a few that the source highlights.
Definitely. It emphasizes that avoiding these is much better than trying to treat them after the fact. So the article mentions diseases like
Hepatitis B. The source notes it can lead to serious liver issues like liver failure, even liver cancer.
chickenpox or varicella.
Yeah.
Common, but can have complications.
And then there's the DTaP vaccine. That one covers 3 things, right?
Yes, 3 diseases, and the source paints a stark picture for each. First, diphtheria. It says you can get it just breathing contaminated air like droplets, causes bad inflammation in the throat, neck, and can affect the heart muscles, potentially leading to heart failure, even death. The article actually quotes CDC figures saying death is about 10% even with treatment.
Oh, whoa.
But it approaches 50% if it's untreated. Half.
50%. And the second one in DTaP.
Pertussis, that's whooping cough. Known for that severe cough, runny nose, but
Yeah.
really scary. It can cause pauses in breathing, especially in babies, and that can be fatal.
Just terrifying for a parent. And the T's in DTaP.
Tetanus, lockjaw. Exposure is through cuts in the skin, and the source description here is, well, it's grim.
Oh, so.
It causes severe muscle spasms, starting with the jaw, hence lockjaw. Neck stiffness, trouble swallowing, then full body spasms, fever, difficulty breathing, and death. But the source adds this really cruel detail: the patient is conscious through it all. constant agony from spasms triggered by any stimuli.
Oh my goodness.
It even says the muscles contract so violently they can break the patient's own bones.
That's hard to even imagine.
Yeah. Death is usually from metabolic problems or aspiration pneumonia, basically breathing complications. The source really doesn't hold back on these descriptions.
No, it doesn't. Those details, they really make you understand the why behind the push for prevention that the source is making. And it continues with other diseases, too.
It does. It lists several more.
Like polio.
Yep, polio, covered by the IPV vaccine, can lead to paralysis, and if it affects the breathing muscles, death. The source uses that image of the iron lung machine. It says they're basically museum pieces now because the vaccine was invented. A powerful point about progress.
Definitely. What else?
Pneumococcal disease. That's the PCV vaccine. It's a lung infection, pneumonia, which can be really life-threatening, especially for young children and older adults.
And does it mention effectiveness?
It does. It quotes the CDC again, saying that since the PCV7 vaccine became routine, the rates of the dangerous, invasive kind of pneumococcal disease from the 7 types in that vaccine have dropped by 99%.
99%. That's incredible.
Huge impact. Then there's hepatitis A, contracted from contaminated food or water. Like Hep B, it can also lead to liver failure.
And the flu. Everyone knows the flu shot.
Right, influenza. Contracted by breathing infected air. The source mentions extreme fatigue, but also points out that it has caused deaths in children. It's not always benign.
Good point. And then there's the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella.
Exactly. And the source details each one.
So measles.
Inhaled through droplets.
Yeah.
Can have severe effects on the respiratory system and also neurological effects. Causes immediate and long-term damage. The source specifically mentions a giant cell pneumonia that's hard to treat, bacterial complications are common, low oxygen levels. Recovery is apparently very difficult because immunity is weakened.
Sounds rough. Mumps.
Mumps is spread by droplets too, and direct contact. Causes swollen salivary glands, the classic chipmunk cheeks look, and muscle pain.
Okay. And rubella?
Rubella, or German measles. The source says it's usually pretty mild for adults.
Yeah.
But it's devastating to an unborn child. If a pregnant mother who isn't immune gets it, it can severely damage the baby's brain, heart, eyes, kidneys. The source uses really strong words here. It says if the baby isn't stillborn or the pregnancy isn't terminated, the child is often severely deformed, suffers for the rest of their lives.
Wow. Just devastating consequences for the baby.
Yeah. Reading through all those descriptions from the source, you really get a sense of the gravity, why this pediatric clinic feels so strongly about preventing them.
Absolutely. So how does the article wrap things up? What's the conclusion?
Well, it explicitly calls the post a wake-up call. A wake-up call against, in its words, conspiracy theorists. It flatly states that vaccines are needed and do a great job at keeping us alive and healthy.
And it revisits the autism point.
Yes, it circles back to say, again, correlation isn't causation. Just because things happen around the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Okay. Any final message to parents?
Yeah, it urges parents to join your pediatrician and stand on the same side as your children, because it repeats, these childhood diseases can be devastating. It frames disease eradication as being largely hinged on effective prevention and urges vaccination unless there's a specific medical reason not to save the nation from the pain of the future epidemics. A call for collective protection.
A very direct message. Does the source mention anything specific about the clinic itself, Omega Pediatrics?
It does, actually. It adds some specific clinic information towards the end. They make a point to say they do not fire families that do not want to vaccinate their children.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but they immediately follow that by noting the growing evidence for vaccines and also what they describe as a rising intolerance of vaccine refusal. Particularly, they say, among communities and parents who have actually suffered because of a vaccine-preventable illness, they've seen the consequences firsthand.
That's a powerful observation to include. Do they offer ways for parents to get more information from them?
Yes, they provide contact details right in the article. They suggest calling the clinic to talk about vaccines or even texting the word Vaccizine to a specific number 470-485-7337 for more info.
Okay, making it easy to reach out.
And they also highlight something unique about their after-hours service. They're open for walk-ins until 9 p.m. on weekdays.
Until 9 p.m. That's unusual for a pediatrician.
It is. And they mentioned telemedicine for existing patients, too. They position this as a real advantage, for parents who might struggle to get immunizations done during typical work hours. Practical help.
That makes sense. Okay.
So if we step back and think about the bigger picture presented in this source, considering its points about preventing future epidemics And that observation about growing intolerance for vaccine refusal among those who've seen the harm these diseases can do. What does that framing maybe suggest about the ongoing discussion? That balance between individual choice in health and the vulnerability of the community as a whole. It sort of leaves you thinking about that tension.
That's a really interesting point to reflect on. Well, looking closely at this Omega Pediatrics article certainly gives us a very clear picture of how one medical practice views the importance of vaccines and also the communication challenges they see today.
Hmm. And understanding the specific threats, the details the source provides about these diseases, it definitely helps contextualize why medical professionals like those at Omega Pediatrics place such a strong emphasis on immunization.
Absolutely. So if you, the listener, are interested in reading this article for yourself, or maybe you want to learn more about vaccines or pediatric care from the perspective of Omega Pediatrics, or perhaps you're interested in their specific services, like that after-hours care we mentioned. The source material we explored today came right from their website. You can find all the details and get a feel for their approach at omegapediatrics.com.
That's OMEGAPEDIATRICS.com.
Exactly. OmegaPediatrics.com. It's definitely the place to go if you want to see the original article and their other resources.
We'd encourage you to check out the information they have available there.
Thanks for joining us for this exploration on Have More Babies.
Goodbye.
See you next time.